Welcome today again to the AI for EU Cafe. We are an online web cafe giving presentations around AI. Today we have as speaker Jean-Luc Dormois from Hub IA in Paris. Welcome, Jean-Luc, and he will present us. The title is Leveraging the Impact of AI in Europe. My name is Carmen McWilliams. I'm your host and I'm the organizer of this online cafe. And please notice that this session will be recorded. The recording will be after this live session available on the AI for EU website. Later I will give you the link. Please don't share any confidential information in this cafe session, and also in this, the cafe speaker expresses his opinion. It is not the official project view, so have fun. And what is the AI Cafe? Just as a little introduction. And it is basically a public space, and public means like anybody is allowed to join, and it gives insight in European AI scene, shares knowledge and experience, and you can meet stakeholders from various areas of AI, in this case Jean-Luc Dormois. And Jean-Luc is a founder of the Hub IA. He will tell us more about it very soon. He has worked in research institutions, large companies, and startups. He's a co-founder of Colray, of Vesta System, and senior advisor of IRENE. And he was director for smart electric systems for the EDF group in Europe, and was in charge of software programs at CEA Tech. He is now involved in startups, accelerators, and initiatives for startups, cyber physical systems, AI, and smart energy in EU. And he has a PhD in AI. So I think very qualified speaker today. I'm very happy to welcome you. Now I give over to our presenter. And after the session, there will be a Q&A. If you have questions, please enter them in your panel on the right side. You see questions. You can type them anytime in. I will read them after the presentation or during the presentation, and Jean-Luc will try to answer them. So now I'm giving over to Jean-Luc, the panel. Jean-Luc, I gave it to you.
Thank you, Carmen. So normally now you should see a donkey. It's not me. Maybe it's gonna be he's gonna be invited next time. I don't know whether it's gonna be interesting or not. But my presentation is going to be this one. Okay. So thank you for being there, and thank you, Carmen, for inviting me. What I'm going to expose is a set of personal views. I would say gathered after a life of devoted to research and innovation. So you mentioned French EBR, which I've been involved in, but this is personal view mainly. The main topic is what is the impact of AI on the economy? Is it really a big impact or just a moderate impact? And where are we going? Not prediction, but what might be possible? And then what should we do? So first of all, I would like to mention something, the sad events. It's about Jacques Pittrat. Maybe some of you know him, and some don't. He was one of the pioneers of artificial general intelligence in the 60s, and he passed away last week. He made absolutely fantastic things. In particular, he worked on what maybe some people call today singularity, but from a very different point of view. He called that the bootstrapping problem. I won't spend much time about this, but this was a very, very sad event. And you know, he was one of the few really important people. I remember once coming into his office with a document on his desk and a short written letter. Dear Jacques, this is my last PhD student's thesis. I would be very grateful if you gave me your opinion. Yours sincerely, Alan Noor. So he was among this small group of people at that time. Sad events, but now we are going to talk about the future. So when I present what's happening in AI to the tenants made up of people not familiar with AI, what I said is, well, you know, it's very simple what's happening. In fact, it's not. With the first industrial revolution, large-scale energy became abundant. With the second one, that is cars, oil, train, electricity, and so on, small-scale, mobile, and flexible energy became abundant. But intelligence kept being a scarce resource. With the AI revolution, intelligence is becoming abundant. So what might be happening is that there is a kind of no input, or maybe some economists talk about human capital, but it means intelligence that has been scarce up to now in the history of humanity, and suddenly, at least under some form, is becoming abundant. So if this is the true picture, not just a metaphor for introducing the topic, then the consequences might be absolutely tremendous, and we should look at that. So let's call it the AI revolution. I don't mean that I'm absolutely sure that this is what's happening, but that might be happening. So just to summarize what I just said, okay, before the Industrial Revolution, you had maybe the craftsman, okay, you had many peasants, but the person who resembled most to what we do today was the craftsman. He had very little energy at his disposal, but he had much intelligence. Suddenly, with the first Industrial Revolution, we had much energy in large quantity, the steam engine, and we use very little intelligence. In fact, you know, in factories, people were all doing the same job and in a very stupid way. With the second Industrial Revolution, something was invented. It was made possible because it was possible to make more flexible manufacturing procedures. So it's the procedure. That is a set of actions which are ordered by an initial plan which is applied during production. It was Fordism, and then it was applied to the whole economy, and it's Taylorism, and then, you know, what applied to GM, for example, by Sloan, and to the whole corporate world. Then came IT, and IT, in fact, has its origin in that. Of course, everybody knows Turing, okay, and his model of a computer, but there were other competing models. For example, Post's model. Emil Post was a Polish logician, and he imagined an equivalent model to Turing's based on the worker while he was working, the model of the procedure for this organization. So from that came software and IT. And IT made it possible to encrypt this intelligence into something automatic in machines. That's software. But nevertheless, though IT now is absolutely everywhere, the level of intelligence that was embedded in that remained limited. So to come back and summarize, with the first Industrial Revolution, we have a unique, simple process for massive production and few engineers, and massive, what we call at that time, proletariat. With the second Industrial Revolution, we have a unique, complex process for massive production, more engineers and other corporate functions, massive training. That is, we try to raise the level of intelligence available through training people, and welfare, which was so part of that, and procedures. And in the IT world, we still have a unique, complex process for massive production. We have more engineers and other corporate functions, etc., plus today global economy and software. Because, you know, some people, of course, it's always easy to summarize history, but some people say that, in a sense, the rise of China is the alliance of IBM and Walmart, you know, a retailer in the US, and the capacity to organize information through IT made it possible to organize production in China And from that, the government in China took advantage to build China to the level we know today. So if we look back at this history, we have now some opinions which are very interesting. The first one was given by Taylor Cowan, who wrote a book in 2011 in the US. It was one of the bestseller in the US, in the NYT, in the New York Times list. It's the Great Stagnation. Since then, he has written other books. So his assumption is that, in fact, the rate of innovation has dramatically slowed down since the 1970s, since the kind of end of impact, full impact of the second industrial revolution. Of course, we have IT, but IT is still limited to a small domain, and the bulk of the economy is based on the second industrial revolution. So, in fact, this is coherent with what we see in the economy, with the productivity, which is slowing down, and so on. There was at the same time another man, Robert Garden, who is a professor at the university, I don't remember where. He just published a paper for a committee from the federal state, but this paper, which was supposed to not to go beyond academic limits, suddenly became public and very much discussed. Is US innovation over, and faltering innovation confronts the 6 headwinds? I won't comment on the details of that because I don't have time, but he's saying about the same, okay? In fact, innovation has not stopped, but slowed down since the 1970s, and IT has not added much to that. So if we look at the figures, and also all the kinds of ideas, at the weight of the IT economy today, in the US, it's about 8% of the economy. In the EU, 6%. The difference is probably the difference in software editors and today platforms and so on. And the average in the world is between 4 and 5%. Okay. So it means if we add that to 100%, that the rest, that is 92% in the US, 94% in the EU, and so on, is the old economy. Not exactly the old economy, but the economy which is based on the technological principles of the second industrial revolution. So in a sense, you know, some people say radical things or provocative things, such as Europe is a developing country in IT. That might be true in some sense, in a limited sense, but it's a global power globally, okay, because of that. And if you look at the FANG, the GAFA's business model, well, it's mainly advertising. And advertising is not really revolutionary because what they are selling is the mass products and services from the formal industrial revolution. So IT is everywhere, but like Solow said, Solow was a Nobel Prize in economy. He used to say, well, IT is everywhere except in the figures for productivity. He said that in 1987, okay? And even Greenspan's new economy, it was during the internet bubble, 1990s up to 2002. Greenspan, who was the Fed chairman, used to say, we have a new economy. You see, productivity is rising first, thanks to IT. This stopped, okay? So we are more or less in that situation. This is the second assumption, okay? That we are still basically in the same principles in terms of technology as the second industrial revolution, and IT has not changed much the situation. So now the question is AI going to change that landscape? So what has changed? What is AI? Okay, AI today is mainly machine learning, okay? So everybody knows that. And in fact, maybe we should consider AI as a way to build software. Up to now, software was built by humans. So either experts, like in the expert systems when I was young, or large engineering organizations, like, I don't know, when you make the software which is embedded in the car, it's very huge organizations which make huge pieces of software embedded in the cars, millions of lines of code, tens of millions of lines of code. So the process is that you take the complexity of the word, and this is processed by human beings, and they produce software. It turns out that humans are not very good at producing software, okay? Personally, when I was a researcher, I worked on that, how to improve the productivity of software, in particular to make more complex software. If you take the advances which have been made, I was mentioning the engineering organization, for example, in the automotive industry, or more generally, or in what we call the cyber physical systems, there were some advances made, but not in principle. With machine learning, we have something different. We invented now efficient algorithms which make it possible to take the complexity of the world in the form of data and to transform it into software, meaningful software. Of course, it's not only fully automatic, it's the alliance between some designers, human designers, and those machine learning algorithms, okay? And it turns out that at least in some domains, the complexity of the generated software is much, much higher. This is maybe not well known, but you know, the Go programs that were designed by DeepMind now are much, much better than the best human at playing Go. There was the first version which has beaten the world champion, the second version which has beaten the Chinese champion, and there is a third version which is so much better than the former versions that it's non-human. So the second point, which is important, is to see that AI and machine learning probably has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What do I mean by that? Okay, there were some advances, but of course, we don't know yet them fully, but there are probably some limits to these advances which have just been made in machine learning. To go forward, we need more people working in the domain, fine brains working in the domain. But this is happening. This is happening for a number of reasons, essentially for the reasons which are how is the world organized today and what are the main trends. If you take the United States, okay, they are fighting to keep their leading role. And the three major domains where the US have a leading role are technology, particularly chip making, energy, finance, and international trade and the reserve currency, that is the dollar, okay? And they want to keep at the forefront of technology because this is what made their fund success possible, okay? And artificial intelligence is among what they are heavily investing in, with other things. So it means that the US, and we know that, are pouring many dollars and so attracting many fine brains in that. It's the same for China, for the same reasons in the sense that China is willing to be a competitor of the US on the three main points: technology, energy, and finance. And it turns out that they have programs to catch up in any domain in the long term. It's not only artificial intelligence, it's also, for example, the electric vehicle or putting a man on the moon. But it turns out, in particular, the fact that DeepMind was able to make a fantastic AlphaGo program, which is considered by the Chinese population like the Chinese game, made AI extremely popular. Kai-Fu said that the second game against the Chinese champion was followed by 240 million people. That's absolutely crazy. And so we know now that there is much money poured into AI and fine brains attracted. So now what is the situation in Europe in the middle? So we know that Europe is, let's say, hesitating about its foreign position. Many people say we should keep it the way it is. We should keep the economy the way it is, the euro the way it is, welfare and democracy, and there are also questions about our neighbors, about sovereignty, and so on. We are still at the forefront in many domains of science, engineering, and trade. This is the situation today. Nevertheless, the trend towards heavily investing and attracting many brains in AI, like in the United States and China, has not happened yet in Europe. So now, if we try to look now at the future, not to predict the future, but to see the impact, possible impact of AI to the economy. If we take this is roughly speaking the French economy, you know, with the different sectors. I'm sorry, this is in French, but if you know some French, you can understand it. And you try to make some analysis. What you see is that, well, in 2030, about 1/3 of the economy could be deeply impacted by AI. Deeply means that the rules are going to change. Not the whole sector is going to change, but the rules internal to sectors are going to change. This is also what the Chinese say, okay? Well, of course, we are not obliged to believe them, but to say that up to, I don't remember whether it's 2025 or 2030, the rise of AI is going to produce a 25% raise in productivity, which is enormous, because you know what we're experiencing today is between 1% and 2% increase in productivity, not more. So if we look at the situation, we know, and sorry, this slide is not very good, but we know that this is going to be possible, in particular through data. That is, we have to make data available. In the US, they have the GAFA. In China, they have Batex or Palantir. In Europe, we need something to do that. So this is the first, I would say, facet of the impact. We are looking at the economy, the existing economy. We know that there is going to be a tremendous impact, and we need to do something about it, in particular gathering the data. And so very probably building an infrastructure for doing that, because we don't have companies or the state which is behind that. But now this is probably not the only impact, because if it's such an important input in the economy, intelligence as compared to energy, as I was saying in the beginning, then there might be also some disruptive impact. So, you know, disruptive, the word now which is used by many persons. But what I mean is simply that new things are going to happen in the economy. So it's true that existing IT players start with some advantages, but also some drawbacks. So this is to compare this to the situation of Europe. They have access to some basic data. They know how to quickly create adaptive services. They understand the verticals and growth in their DNA. That they need to get out of the purely byte-based economy. What I mean by that, they need to go outside of the 8% weight IT economy. But it turns out that mattering energy is hard. That is, to get out of these purely IT processes, to make cars, to make delivery, to make retail, and so on, it's really hard. Because simply the word is there, you know, it's not going as fast as bytes, okay? So you need to learn to design, to manufacture, you need to learn about logistics, etc. And also the business model of all these human activities which are outside the pure scope of IT is not a business model based on advertising. It's a business model based on selling products and services. So if we look at the possible destructive impacts, I will insist on the last two ones. First possible impact is to have in some domains radical deflations by embedding AI into existing products or making those products new products out of AI. So some examples, for example, modular or reusable space traps, which is more or less what's happening with SpaceX. Though SpaceX is still in a very, I would say, primitive level of development, with probably what's possible. If you think of last mile delivery or retail, where you fully automatize everything, this is also a possibility to radically deflate the price of this kind of activity. You can think also of construction, you know. I remember having a meeting with our British friends at the embassy on what we could do together in AI. And I said, okay, let's build a bridge over the channel. Because at this time, Boris Johnson used to say that we should do that. So I said, but just with robots, okay? Let's build robots which would be able to build the bridge, fully to build the bridge. There's something radical in the way to build things. Okay, so we also have new products and services, for example, the autonomous cars, and I would like to insist to the two last one, the new B2C markets and new corporate organization. In particular, I would like to insist on B2C, because what I heard from discussions in Europe, the high-level group of experts on artificial intelligence and so on, the outcome would be, well, B2C is dead because it's already among the GAFAs and the BATIs. I believe it's totally wrong. If you take, for example, the application of AI to energy, and more precisely to the power system, which is something that, which I know, I was involved in that in a large company. I created 2 startups in that domain. We all know about the smart grid. It's a word which was coined 15 years ago, and there have been some advances in that. Basically, what's going to happen is that intelligence is going to come to the end. Today, the power system is controlled by intelligence in the middle, and it's going to be to the end. So we are going to have millions, billions of small autonomous AIs which are going to deal with everything, with energy, with information, with money, with the people, okay? And they are going to talk to each other and to a new central business. This is a B2C business, okay? And of course, the B2C model is not based on advertising. It's based on the exchange of cheap intelligence against expensive energy. So totally different. And I believe that this is an open domain where Europe could go. Just another example, I believe I got to hurry up. The impact on corporate organization. This is a picture that I like for discussing with startup how to organize things. You know, the main functions. There are many such schemas, but the main functions of a company, and the startup should at some point achieve this kind of organization. Okay. The people who are involved in that corporate organization are just doing a small, limited things. You know, it's division of labor. But there might be a different organizations, because today we have key functions, processes, main decision is at the center, long cycles of decisions, years for a new product or service, for example. And so the people may use, they are allowed to use their intelligence, but within the limits of the process. I met once a smart driver, a smart taxi driver. I don't remember, it was Bolt, Marcel, or Uber, whatever. That guy was very smart. He has managed to assemble a set of smart services for his professional activity. He was not devoted to a single platform. Even he was doing something different while driving a taxi. He had also assembled services for finance, for provisioning his car. He was playing a game of multi-platform. He has almost found a way to automatically manage his agenda so as to cope with these personal constraints, you know, with the kids and so on, and to optimize his revenues. So this guy, in fact, has totally destroyed the corporate view. Someone engaged in a large organization. He put together around him the main processes of a corporation. He is a corporation by himself. So this is probably something which is going to happen. Of course, the way it's going to happen is important. Is it going to be a generalization of the gig economy, or something which is going to provide work with many? Okay. And there are signs of that, you know. Something which has existed for quite some time is network marketing, for people who know marketing. Or if you look at the paper written by Erich Schmidt on how Google works, this is something also which is happening. Small teams directly connecting engineering and technology and the market. So the last point I would like to mention, so I said impact on the existing economy, impact on the new economy, so to speak, and also impact on basic technology. We were discussing with Carmen just before this talk, and she was telling me that her daughter is much involved in, you know, helping the planet to be in better shape and so on. The young people want that, and they're absolutely right to do that. Okay, I believe that what we have today is that we are lacking also some basic technology, not only in IT and AI, but in all the other domains to really tackle these issues. This is probably not the only thing to do, but technology can bring some solutions to that. So I believe that the alliance with AI, and there are many examples of that popping up today, with basic science could provide some new basic technology. So at all domains, in physics, in chemistry, in biology, I'm thinking in particular of synthetic biology, that could bring new materials, new energy, new health, and so on. So this is the third pillar, I would say. So now from that, I've got to hurry up. How should Europe organize itself? So I believe that there are three pillars. The first one is to have some, of course, it's just a schema. I don't mean that it's three different instruments. It's just an idea for the discussion. So the first one is to have instruments for the existing economy, to help the existing economy to face the upcoming impact of AI. This concerns large groups and SMEs, and basically it's about research and innovation projects, okay? I will say a word afterwards about that. The second one is to have an instrument for the new economy. And we know that in Europe, we are not very good up to now regarding that sector. So it's mainly about startups, but I believe that startups are going to be slightly different from what they've been up to now. And in particular, what will have to be done, because what I said before, you know, it's really linked to the 92% of the existing economy, which has to deal with matter and energy. The relation of startups with large companies and SME, that is, with the existing economy, which has many of the resources required to be successful in that, the market, the knowledge of the customer, the knowledge of how to do manufacturing, logistics, and so on. This relationship between startups and the large companies is absolutely key to succeed. If you look, for example, just to mention it, you know, at Shenzhen, I have a friend, a very good friend, who was leading a laboratory in AI and how to assess or to certify AI for the autonomous car, just in the middle of Shenzhen, okay? They have every relation with whomever they want, Tencent, of course, but all those companies and all this ecosystem in Shenzhen to make an autonomous car, and a very innovative one. So the last one, as I was mentioning it, is the instrument for new basic technology using AI. And I believe there maybe the RTOs, you know, the research technological organizations, could find something very interesting to do, which might be slightly different from what they've been doing up to now, and very interesting. And this would be, of course, linked to deep tech startups. So, helping the existing economy. My personal experience, because I was involved in that, that Europe was able to build some successful instruments of that kind. And I remember I was involved in that, the Artemis joint undertaking in embedded systems. So it's an instrument which brings together industry in some domain. So therefore, embedded system, that is the automotive, avionics, medical systems, and so on. Together, they put the industry in the driving seat of the instrument, and they say, okay, now you're going to organize your own research and innovation projects. You fund them, and we help you to fund them through European money and also national money. And this was also the case in electronics. This was merged into Excel, which is for microelectronics and what's called now cyber physical systems. It spends around, I'm not sure of the figures, but it's the order of magnitude, 2 billion of overall investment every 3 years. So let's say almost 1 billion a year. And this had some successes. For example, NXP, which is just a Dutch company, was in very bad shape in the early 2010s. And now it's in much better shape. And this had an impact. This program has really an impact on that. So I know that there are some discussions with probably something around that kind of idea for AI, and I believe that Europe should do that. Now, the question is, and this is much more difficult, how to create a European environment for the new AI-based economy. Today, most people say, okay, we have startups, but we should bring some more funding to the startups. I believe it's not sufficient, because we have to look at the whole life cycle of a startup. The startup is created, it has some initial funding, several rounds of funding, and it has to find the right product market fit. And in particular, for doing that, it has to find the channels for growth, okay? Basically, when it's pure IT, the channel is digital marketing. But when it's not pure IT, and this is going to be the case for the bulk of the impact of AI on the economy, you need other channels. For example, for the power system, to equip the end consumer, that is buildings, industry, transportation, you need some channels to address those people. It's not very digital. It won't work. So you need some cooperation with the people of the existing economy who are in those sectors. And of course, you need an exit. So an exit could be an IPO, or more often than not, you are acquired by a large company. But who in Europe is going to acquire a successful startup at the level of, like, I don't know, 1 or 10 billion? No one today. So for each of these steps in this kind of automaton, okay, we need to associate the existing players from the existing economy from project inception for finding the channel for growth and for exit. Now the question is, what kind of game do we want to play in Europe? It's very simple in a sense. It's the level of exit of our startups. Do you want exit at 10 million, at 100 million, at 1 billion, 10 billion, and so on? And if you look at the funding amounts which are necessary for doing that, you have what's typically called in the VC terms Series A, B, C, and beyond. But if you look now at the level of involvement of these existing companies in that process, you see that for 10 billion, okay, it's in place. Every company now, large company, has an open innovation team. If you want to go up to the 100 million, then you need to involve the whole business unit. And I can tell you that it's much more difficult. From 1 billion up at the C level. So it means that we need some incentive to raise the level of interest to this new economy inside the large companies. Things are happening in large companies. I'm not saying that nothing is happening. Things are happening. Nevertheless, I believe that it's the role of a government or public body like the Commission to build incentives to change this environment. So we need to associate some existing players and so on. That I said already. So one possibility to do that, yeah, just to insist on the difficulty of doing that, sorry. There are a number of chicken and eggs problems. That we have better funded VCs or corporate funds, and we have better support for commercialization for existing players, and we have better exits if higher level is involved. That's what I said. But we also have better, more ambitious projects to fund if the game is bigger, and conversely. I have some friends who are in the process of building a 1 billion fund in AI, VC fund in AI, okay? And they want to be at the Series B, that is, they want to fund around 20 projects at the level of 50 billion, okay, in the next 3 years. But it's difficult to find that kind of project in Europe. Because simply, if it's not possible to have a kind of exit at the end, then the projects are less ambitious. So there have been some positive steps in that direction. For example, the European Parliament recently asked for instruments for funding non-bankable projects in innovation for startups. I would like just to mention, I'm also involved in that there is the IC pilot for the next 2 years, which now are able to fund startups up to the level of 15 millions, through Series A. And there are also corporate funds which are being launched by European companies in the automotive sector, for example. But nevertheless, we will need some incentives. So this is just an idea that I am submitting, and you do whatever you want with that. We could think of a strategic European fund for AI startups, but which would involve the existing economy. So it would federate in some sense, maybe a loose or a strong link with other corporate funds. The basic initial scheme, for example, would be, okay, we find 10 large companies who are able to commit 300 million a year to this kind of fund. There would be per year a 1 billion incentive from the European Investment Fund, and also 1 billion from member states through various means. It could be also fiscal incentives, for example, or the kind of stuff. Okay. So this will be an instrument, as I was saying, for money, but also as a kind of a sociological instrument, spearhead. Okay. to raise focus on innovation up to C-level and to learn to integrate, to help them to integrate acquisition without killing them, to strongly connect to transformation and so on. And so, last remark about that, remember why this is necessary, why it's not possible to do that kind of innovation within existing companies. So first of all, yes, just as a model, when IT was born in the 60s, if you look at the domain at that time, and you look in particular at the silicon industry, people who make chips, 1/3 of the market in the US was defense and space. This is what created IT and Moore's Law. So we did something similar in Europe today with AI for all the domains, but not with defense and space, with all the domains. There is something which makes Europe absolutely in good position for succeeding, which is that new AI-based products and services will be mainly embedded in the hardware. So very probably there will be no winner takes all, like we see in IT, in pure IT. And the existing economy assets are key to growth, and we have them in Europe. So any industrial domain today is potentially a defense and space support, that I already said. And above all, developing new products and services require a different structure from the large company that we have today with slow decision cycles. You need shorter decision cycles. You need to make a decision of a new product or to try something on the market, maybe every 2 weeks, okay? And you need a close connection between R&D and marketing. It's totally different from what's happening, which is why we need to have this innovation creating the new economy separated out but linked to the existing economy. So to end up, I won't say much about the new basic technology developed using AI. A last point, a historical point. When you read books in history regarding the form of industrial revolution, actually the transition was extremely difficult socially, okay? When some technological change of historical magnitude happens, it's sometimes very difficult. But it also shows that those who miss the revolution have even harder times. So it's not a negative point or a pessimistic point I would like to make, but we absolutely need to tackle that to make the transition as smooth and as quick as possible. Of course, I've not talked about ethics and so on, which is a huge topic today in Europe. This is linked to that. I'm not talking about revolution. My illustration of Banksy is just to, you see, today the bad people are not so bad. It's just a teddy bear, so they are not so naughty. So that's all. Thank you. I've been a little bit longer than expected. In fact, it was expected that I would be a little bit longer than expected. So your questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean-Luc, for the very interesting presentation. We have now here some kind of echo. Yes, I have some questions from the audience, and I myself also, of course, have questions. Most concretely, I start with Jose, not Jose, Jose. He asked, I'd like to know your views on the broader aspects of AI in Europe. There are a widespread idea in some circles that Europe perhaps is too dependent on foreign technology when it comes to AI. What are your take on that? What are the potential consequences of the risk dependency for European business, governments, and citizens? How can we overcome the situation? That's Jose's questions.
Okay, so can you repeat the beginning of the question? You were mentioning dependencies of Europe regarding AI technology, right?
Yeah, and he's basically in the beginning saying there's like we are getting too dependent, and do you think this is so? Are we too dependent on other countries, continents? What are the potential consequences of this dependency, of this risk?
Well, we are dependent on IT, that's true. Okay. up to now, regarding AI, I don't believe the game has not been played yet. We're not that much dependent. Well, in a practical way, if I want to embed some AI application in some product, okay, I'm probably going to use some environments made in the US, TensorFlow or whatever. It could be also I could be also using Scikit, for example, which is an environment which has been made partly in Europe. Okay, but it's not that a serious problem, you know. The real serious problems are going to come when the products embedded AI are going to come to be there. And so the dependency is going to be on the competence. Do we have the brains to do that? Yes. But we don't know how to organize them. So we have to learn how to organize those brains in order to make those new products or to improve the way today's products are made. Okay. And of course, it's also the case for chips, for example. The first startup I created makes very high performance chips, Calray. Europe is not the first in the world regarding chips, but we are not in that bad a situation. That's what I was mentioning. We've been able to make programs like Excel, for example, which improve the situation. And now we have a chip industry which makes it possible, for example, for the automotive or health sector to be relatively independent from the goods. So it's not the case for the high-end chips that are in smartphones, for example, but it's the case for that. And when we created Calray with some friends, we had the objective of having a European company which could outcompete the others with very high performance, and today AI required this performance. So the dependency on the candidates is not that high today. Of course, it's going to happen in the future if we do nothing. We are going to be dependent, but today, no. My message is not a message of pessimism. Just the contrary. Just trying to analyze things and to say the story is going to be different from IT.
Yes.
Because we're going to enter the existing economy. We must organize and learn to do things that we have not been good at doing up to now. This innovative economy, okay, this startup stuff and so on. Nevertheless, we have the basic resources for doing that.
Yes. I think we also, maybe at the beginning anyway, for the commercial products. There comes a new question, one more from the participants. Please enter more questions if you have any. I have a second from Mia, and she asked you, Jean-Luc, can you comment on a need for transparent and open AI technologies to overcome merely industrial bias of such technologies?
Transfer of open AI technology, that's right?
It's like, is there a need for transparent and open AI technologies to overcome merely industrial bias of such technologies?
Well, I don't know exactly what the question is meaning. If transparency is in the relationship between the industry which is making products with respect to its customers. As a customer, I would like to know what's inside the product. I would like to be deceived by the producer in some way. You know, for example, they would steal my private data or whatever. This is one thing. Yeah, of course, some rules are going to be necessary for that, and also very probably some technology. But it's the case in many sectors, in particular in Europe, also in other continents, but probably more in Europe than elsewhere. We are more and more aware and concerned by what's really inside the product. Okay, this pesticide, for example, stuff. Okay, so it's going to be the same with AI. My opinion is it's not a reason at all to reject any AI embedded in product. Okay, but okay, this is one point. Being transparent could also mean that there is some federation of efforts which is necessary probably among industrial domains. This is probably true. There are some platforms and some solutions which are probably necessary in the automotive sector, in the health sector, in transportation, in construction, wherever. Some basic technology, some infrastructure. For example, I was mentioning this we need some platform to bring together the data from various players, but who would like to keep those data confidential. Nevertheless, to have some level of use of those data together make some meaningful AI application. Okay, this kind of platform is necessary. And at Hub Francia, there is such a project. I believe that there are other projects in Europe in that direction. So this is where probably industry has to share something. And so it means that the public bodies, such as the member states or the European Commissions, certainly have something to do in that area.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and I would like now to basically also say that, I mean, we in Europe, we heard it together when we were in this AI Assembly conference in Brussels, you and me, Jean-Luc, that they said, okay, we have a competitive edge in Europe because on trustworthy AI. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's one idea, but there are, I believe, two facets of the idea. One facet is to say that we have some researchers working on that to develop technology to achieve this trustworthy AI. And also we have, I would say, a general environment for doing that, legal environment, citizens are concerned, high-level people in the public bodies in particular are really interested in that. And also that doing that will be a competitive advantage with the others. Very probably, yes. Very probably, yes. Because like any technology, AI can have a good side and a dark side, okay? And the dark side is of course, always very tempting. If Europe is able both to define what is trustworthy AI and at the same time to make it, it's not sufficient just to define what it should be, but we also have to make it, then it's probably a winning strategy. And the winning strategy, I don't mean in terms of competition with the others. It's also a winning strategy for the others. I'm a humanist. I'm not in favor of too strong competition between between the peoples.
Okay.
But I would insist, nevertheless, on the fact that okay, let's define it, but let's make it. Because if just words, it's going to be worth very little.
Yes. Good. Then we are coming to the end of the show today. Sorry enough, but I have one more question from, but it has to be quick because I want to say goodbye to everybody. So here is Aisha. Aisha, she asked, how about your slide on schema for new instrument? My question is about the strategic EU fund. Is this related to the call for proposals for the AI for EU project or to other calls? Also, when
no, I did not mean it to be related to some specific call. I mean it's just a general idea, general schema, and you can do whatever you want out of this. Okay, no problem. So now, just if you want to continue the discussion and so on, you can have my email. It's very easy. Or you go to LinkedIn or whatever, and we can exchange emails. No problem.
Yes, great. So this is, I'm now changing back to me as presenter because I'm going to show the last slide. And basically this cafe encourages you to get directly in contact with Jean-Luc. If you feel like you're interested in more details, you have more questions, please write to him. You will find also this PowerPoint basically on the, you will basically find all the information about this session on the AI for EU platform. And we basically now, it's like 3:57. I would like to encourage you to come to the next session, which is, one moment, I hope you see it soon. It will be AI for EU Strategic Vision. The speakers will be Michela Milano from University of Bologna and Sonja Silner from Siemens. These both ladies are the leader of this vision, of this paper, but of course everybody is welcome to give comments. And the registration you find for this next web session also on the AI for EU platform, so feel free to come. And my last wish, as I'm organizing soon weekly even these web sessions in the cafe, please suggest topics or yourself as speaker or somebody you would like to hear. It's an open cafe. It would be great to have a wide variety of speakers and topics. So thank you for joining. A lot of people today here, and see you next time. Thank you, Jean-Luc, again. Thank you for doing this great presentation. We will talk further afterwards. Okay, have a nice afternoon and bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.